callers today. Man, what's up with that? Radical people calling in. Radical folks for a radical show. Pretty rad, man. I'm down with that. You can call in. The number is 423-800-8949. That's 423-800-8949 if you want to call in and say really anything at all, because it's election season, right? Now is the time to say whatever the heck you want, as long as, we don't have to bleep you or anything. 423-800-8949 is the number to call in here at Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240 and hotnewstalkradio.com. The FBI has had kind of a problem here the last few weeks. Really, the FBI has kind of had a problem for a long time. And I want to explain my vendetta with James Comey, because it started way before the election was even in the news. Way before. James Comey made a few statements way back in the day, back when Apple was having that whole scandal about not releasing that information about the iPhones. There was this big statement from James Comey about that. He said that the Apple should be the model citizen that it has been in the past and give the FBI a backdoor into the iPhone. Now, that just shows you the mentality that James Comey has. James Comey has the mentality already of state over citizen. I mean, it does. From that one statement, we know that it has a perspective of state over citizen. And the thing is, it goes deeper than that too, because this is a mentality that is prevalent, unfortunately, in the culture of law enforcement. And James Comey is the CLEO of the FBI, so to speak. He's kind of like the police chief of the FBI, the director of the FBI. He governs what we think of the FBI. And now there's not really much to think of the FBI, unfortunately for them. There's not really a whole lot of credence anymore to the whole idea of the FBI. There's not really any credence to it anymore. There's no reason to care at all what the FBI says about much of anything, because we know that it's not credible anymore. The whole deal with Clinton, who committed a crime, and they admitted it, committed a crime, and then doesn't get punished for it. She committed a crime and then didn't get punished for it. And it's not just she committed a crime and they denied it. It's that she committed a crime, they acknowledged it. This is not allegation. They acknowledged that she committed a crime and then did absolutely nothing about it, and then raised another investigation after new emails came out just a few days ago and did nothing about it again. The FBI is not going to be changing its decision regarding the Clinton emails, and that makes sense. I'm not shocked. But the FBI is upholding its decision that it made back in July to not recommend charges about against Hillary Clinton. And the Dow is surging. I think the Dow tripled as a result. That's something. The Dow surging, which is really fitting. You have artificial leaders, and when they turns out they're not going to be indicted, you have an artificial economy that surges as a result. It's only fitting, isn't it? The FBI not changing its decision regarding Hillary Clinton's emails. It's a real crying shame that we live in an age where even the police can't be trusted, or at least the federal police can't be trusted. Think about this. There is now no reason to give any credence at all to the FBI whenever they open an investigation into anyone for any kind of crime that's similar at all to what Clinton did. Because now they're going to be viewed as hypocrites if they prosecute anyone for disclosing confidential information to someone who's not fit to see it. I saw a headline the other day. I don't know if it's true or not, but I saw a headline the other day that was talking about how Clinton allegedly asked one of her maids to print out information for her. I mean, come on. We're talking about someone who's handling highly classified information. Secretary of State. Now, I'm not saying that I care all that much about Secretary of State, because I don't. I think that they're all puppets, and I think that they are all worthless individuals when it comes right down to it. I think that working for the feds makes you less than anyone else. It really does. If you work for the feds in any sort of higher up official capacity, you are less of an American than anyone else, not more of an American. You're less of an American than anyone else because you've put yourself in the presumptuous position of being a ruler over other people. And that is unacceptable in the American system. It's unacceptable in how we should be thinking of government, right? You shouldn't be thinking of people in power as people in power. They're not supposed to be people in power. The people are supposed to be the power. We're supposed to be the power. You know, us, the people, you and I, you and me. We're supposed to be the power here, not the people in their offices pushing papers, because that's what most of them do. It's just a series of people who push papers that lead us down the road to, well, collapse. I was going to say damnation, but that sounds a little bit too religious. Leads us down the road to collapse. And that's what we're heading for. Economic, political, social, you name it, we're heading down that path. Now, there is a solution, because this is something that always drives me crazy about political pundits and radio show hosts and political talking heads. They always talk about how bad things are, but they never offer any kind of solution. They always talk about, oh, look how bad it is. Oh, my goodness, it's so bad. Everything's terrible. But they don't offer any kind of solution. They just say, everything's terrible, but if you elect my guy, things will be great. And we know that's just another lie, because even electing the right guy, he might be the most moral person ever, he's got to offset all these other people who are not nearly as moral as he is. You might believe Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton, I don't care, whoever, is the second coming. You can think that. But what is he or she going to do once elected? Because you have Congress to fight, you've got the House and the Senate, you've got the Supreme Court, you've got local jurisdictions who might not go along with what you say, you've got local courts who might overrule what you say, and then you've got to deal with people who are just going to reject any ruling you have and refuse to obey. These are all possibilities. So even if Donald Trump miraculously or Hillary Clinton miraculously are the ideal of what you want, they're not going to be able to get done what you hope they can get done. That's true for a state senator. That's true for a judge. That's somewhat true for a sheriff. That's true for anyone you elect or appoint. And I'm not a huge fan of appointing people either. That's a big problem too, I think. But no matter who you get in there, they're not going to be the person you hope they're going to be, because they can't be. They're restricted, fortunately. Restrictions are good. But the way that they're restricted is less and less as time goes by, unfortunately. Less and less as time goes by. It's a shame. It's a crying shame, in fact. But that's the American system. And maybe it's actually not such a bad thing. But here's the other thing. Remember, we had that whole deal with President Obama suing the state of Arizona. That shows you something. You know, whether you agree or not with whatever happened with that lawsuit, that shows you something, that the feds can have a contest with Arizona and or any given state, and any of those given states have a chance to win. Wow. You know, that shows you something, that the feds don't hold all the power. They don't, especially when it comes to society, especially when it comes to local people just saying no. Because you can do that, believe it or not. You can just say, no, I'm not going to obey. I'm not going to go along with what you're trying to get me to do. I'm not going to comply. No, I'm going to, no, I'm not going to do what you say. Sheriffs have the ultimate power when it comes to this. Sheriffs, especially elected officials, when it comes down to them, sheriffs are the best, I would say. Sheriffs are even better than mayors, I'd say, by a long shot, because sheriffs have the unique authority of deeming something unconstitutional and refusing to enforce it. So say, let's, jump off the wall here and say that there's marijuana legislation in any given state. We'll call it the state of nowhere, because let's make up one. The state of nowhere. Let's say in the state of nowhere, there are a bunch of different counties, just like other places, maybe even parishes. There are a bunch of different counties, and in the state of nowhere, marijuana, possession of which is illegal, and so is distribution. All right, well, that's pretty standard across the states. But what about this? The sheriff is ultimately the chief law enforcement officer of his county. So what if in this particular county, let's call it Greene County to be funny, what if in Greene County, in state nowhere, the state of nowhere, the people in Greene County don't really care about marijuana. In fact, maybe they enjoy it a little bit, and maybe they grow some for personal use. Let's live in an idyllic world where that happens. The sheriff in the county of Greene, in the state of nowhere, can say, okay, you know what? It's not worth my time to constantly enforce possession laws for marijuana. So I'm not going to. I'm going to order my deputies, you know what? Ignore the whole marijuana possession thing for now. We'll bust distributors and we'll stop the cartels as much as we can. But people who we can confirm either own it locally or obtained it from growing it in their own yard, we're not going to enforce that. They can do that. Or what if there's an assault weapons ban? You can do that too. What if there's an assault weapons ban, or there's just in general a ban on owning weapons in this particular state? The sheriff can say, I'm not going to enforce that. He can do that. The sheriff holds a lot of power. The sheriff ultimately is a lot more powerful, believe it or not, than even the president in the local jurisdiction, because our sheriff right now actually holds quite a bit more power than the president, because our sheriff could say tomorrow, I'm not going to enforce any new federal regulation, or I'm not going to allow the FBI to enter the county of Hamilton. Hamilton County is not going to have any FBI agents or any TBI agents or even, if you want to go extreme, any IRS agents or any federal agents of any kind enter into Hamilton County. They will all be expelled. I'll arrest them on site and force them to leave. He could do that, believe it or not. And the only person who could stop them is the coroner, because back in the old days, the coroner was an agent of the crown, and the sheriff was the one appointed to uphold the king's law in the particular county or parish or area or what have you. The shire, you might say. That's what a shire is. A sheriff is a shire reef. He was the person who upheld the law in his particular shire or neighborhood, you might say. So that's where that comes in. It's a actually kind of interesting system, and it works really well. It's just that it's not used very much. That's the thing. The systems are in place for a rejection of federal systems. It's just they're not being used. You know, the system is there. You can secede if you want to, right? The system exists. The problem is it's not being implemented. It's not being used. And that's a problem. Maybe, anyway, depending on your way of looking at things. Now, this is Binary here on Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240 and hotnewstalkradio.com. Number to call in is 423-800-8949. That's 423-800-8949. And because the election is coming up, I want to point at something that I think is fascinating. What's happening right now with the election is something that you wouldn't have had 10 years ago. I mean, think about the 2012 election. Basically, online, all you saw was Obama stuff online, and McCain was basically not even talked about. Sorry, Romney was not even talked about. Him, too. You didn't really see anything at all for Romney, but you saw some ads for Obama because the Democrats were ahead of the curve, actually. The Democrats were pretty good about that. The thing is, the roles have kind of switched, actually. The Democrats are very good at social media nowadays, and the Republicans are also pretty good at social media nowadays. So it's sort of a toss-up between the two of them. Now you have the arena of public opinion on the internet. And because of that, people are extra scrutinous. Is that a word? They're scrutinizing to the extreme. You have people online who are looking at everything Clinton does. And you have people online who are looking at everything Donald Trump does, from his hand motions to how big his hands are, to what hat he wears, to how he wears his hair, to what kind of shoes he wears, how expensive his suits are. And that goes for Clinton as well. Who styled her hair? How much did that cost? Who made her suit? How much did that cost? Look at the way she weighs. Look at how she needs to sit down because she's older. All these different factors that are accounted for by people online. You didn't have that back in the old days. I mean, yeah, elections were colored by different factors, right? But they were major factors, or they were gaffes, or they were things that would show up in a tabloid. And now it could be any minor thing. Bernie Sanders had that moment where a bird landed on his podium, and it seemed like a shaft of light from heaven, right, to a lot of people. Not to me, but to a lot of people it seemed that way. That's something that was exemplified and really shown off in the modern era through the internet. But back in the old days, that probably would have just been a minor talking point in the election process. It would have just been, oh yeah, look at that thing happened. Anyway, moving on. Or worse yet, Bernie Sanders just wouldn't have been in national media at all. That's something to look at, too. Donald Trump owes a lot of his popularity to the internet and to Twitter, and he acknowledges that 100%, I'm sure. Bernie Sanders is the same way. He raised most of his money through very well-meaning young people, mostly online, universities. People who attend university, especially, were very much in favor of Bernie Sanders. Had he gotten the nomination, I think he would have won. To be quite frank with you, I think Bernie Sanders had a good shot, but he was shot down. And that's the other thing about the 21st century. In the 21st century, we can now scrutinize all the mistakes, but we can also get more information. And the FBI, funnily enough, plays a pretty good part in that. As much as I dislike the FBI, as much as I despise the FBI, in fact, they did something kind of interesting by accident. On October the 30th, a long, quiet FBI Twitter account, according to Ars Technica, began releasing a torrent of links to documents on the Bureau's Freedom of Information Act library server. Among the documents were several from the investigation into former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton's use of a private email server and a decade-old investigation into the Clinton Foundation over a pardon given by President Bill Clinton at the end of his term. According to an FBI official, the flood of tweets occurred because of a backlog of updates dating to June. The logjam finally broke when a content management system software patch was installed last week, so suddenly you had a ton of tweets coming out of this long, dormant internet bot. Weird, isn't it? It's all kind of strange. It's something that's completely out of your control for the most part. You can shut it down, obviously, but it's something that you're not even thinking about that's tweeting all these things. The timing of the releases, which also included documents from the investigation of former CIA Director David Petraeus for leaking classified info back in 2014, to links to video surveillance from the 2015 protests in Baltimore. 2012 was David Petraeus. Drew speculation from many on Twitter that someone at the FBI was trying to damage the presidential campaign of Hillary Clinton in the final weeks before the election day. In response to an initial inquiry by Ars Technica, the FBI sent on a statement saying the FBI Record Management Division receives thousands of FOIA requests annually. I'm talking about Freedom of Information Act requests. And they have a first-in, first-out basis. By law, FOIA materials which have been requested 3 or more times are posted electronically to the FBI's public reading room shortly after they are processed. Per the standard procedure for FOIA, these materials then become available for release and were posted automatically and electronically to the FBI's public reading room in accordance with the law and established procedures. But notice this interesting thing. Anytime anything comes out, even if it's public information, even if it's a FOIA, anytime anything at all comes out about Clinton, they immediately say, oh, they're trying to sabotage the election. They're trying to sabotage the election. Look at them trying to sabotage the election. But it's truth. It's documents. It's scans of documents. It's leaked emails. It's candid stuff. It's not made up. How are they trying to color the election by releasing fact? Why are they so afraid of fact? You know, the Republicans, as far as I know, didn't make the same accusation, although I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't make the same accusation back when the whole thing about Trump saying, grabbing a woman by an interesting part, which is not meant to be grabbed in that manner. That whole thing came out, and I don't remember anyone saying, oh, they're trying to rig the election. Now, Donald Trump has said they're trying to rig the election, and they very well may be. But why is it the Democrats are constantly, at least Clinton anyway, constantly making accusations that they're trying to rig the election or they're trying to alter the election when it's an official agency releasing official papers that are declassified? It's not an FBI official coming out and saying, I don't think Clinton is a good choice. It's not a former Secretary of State coming out and saying Clinton would be a disaster. It's not anything like that, although I'm sure that's happened. It's not something like that. It's papers being released. It's documents. It's truth. Why are you afraid of truth? Why are you afraid of footage? Why are you afraid of documents? Why are you afraid of really anything? If there were leaked emails that came out about me, they wouldn't be very interesting. It would just be emails back and forth about business stuff and maybe some MP3s going back and forth. And that's about it. Facebook messages are another matter, but for the most part, emails are pretty innocuous. They shouldn't have any sort of incriminating information in them. So why are you so afraid of them? I don't understand. I do understand, though. That's the thing. I do understand perfectly. It's because people like Clinton, and not just Clinton, but people like Clinton, politicians really, are afraid of truth. That's the thing. They are afraid of truth, and they will make their end goal making other people afraid of truth. They will make other people suspicious of every modicum of fact that comes out, to the point where no one will believe anything for sure. No one will know anything for sure. It's interesting, isn't it? And the fact is, I'm not telling you who to vote for. You can vote for whoever you want. That's kind of the American thing. You can vote for whoever you want. I'm not telling you, oh, look how bad Clinton is. Well, maybe I am. But I'm not telling you, look, Clinton is the worst person ever, and if you vote for her, you're going to hell or anything like that. You vote for whoever you want. That's the thing. But for some odd reason, we don't see that very often. We don't see that mentality very often, especially among young people, where they act like if you vote for anyone they disagree with, you're literally the next Hitler. That's always it. Literally Hitler is always the phrase they use. I don't understand. Having a different political opinion is somehow a death sentence socially. I don't get that. It's a very obvious concerted effort to make people who think differently from them, them being establishment or whatever you want to call them, unpopular, uncool. That kind of happened back in the Clinton days. I mean, in the 90s. That kind of happened back then, too, where you were uncool. if you thought much of anything at all about conservative ideas. You were grandpa, you know. Oh, grandpa's got to hold on to his guns. That was the old mantra. Grandpa's got to hold on to his guns. Oh, for my cold dead hands, all that stuff. You know, you were uncool if you had ideas about that kind of thing. If you thought that anything other than whatever the Democratic Party wanted was in any way viable, you were suddenly uncool. You know, it will wage social warfare against you. And it works very well because kids, especially teenagers, are very impressionable and want to go along with the crowd. Teenagers want to go along with the crowd. No matter what crowd it is, they'll want to go along with some crowd. So maybe their crowd is the young Republicans, in which case Republicans can do nothing wrong. Or maybe their crowd is young Democrats or young socialists or the Communist Party of America, whatever. So their viewpoint is Democrats are always right and they can do no wrong, and conservatives are always wrong. You know, conservatives are always backwards and they're unintelligent and what have you. But that's a very non-inclusive idea. Funnily enough, it's actually not very progressive to think that people who think differently from you are immediately wrong and should be silenced. Funnily enough, that's not particularly progressive. This is Binary here on Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240, hotnewstalkradio.com. I am someone who is in favor of speaking your mind, saying whatever the heck you want. Free speech, right? I'm all for that. You can be a Democrat, socialist, Republican, libertarian. I don't care. You can say whatever you want. Talk to whoever you want. You can ballot whoever you want. Vote for whoever you want, because that's how it works. That's how it's supposed to work anyway. But unfortunately, socially anyway, we're making it uncool to do that. We're making it uncool to think different. Remember Apple's old thing, think different? Now I guess it's, think the same and always buy Apple products. By the way, do you see what Apple's doing? The whole thing. I saw an article the other day, or actually it's just today. I saw a headline. It was Apple is now a seller of dongles that happens to make smartphones and laptops. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. I guess that's the phrase, though, that could be used to describe the 21st century so far. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. But who will rise from the ashes? Someday, remember Taxi Driver, the movie, someday a real rain will come and wash all this scum off the streets. I always think about that when I think about elections. I think about politicians. Someday a real rain will come and wash all this scum off the streets. Yeah, it's edgy, I know, but it kind of rings true, too. This is Binary here on Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240, hotnewstalkradio.com. We'll be bringing you comprehensive election coverage and in as an unbiased way as we possibly can here on Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240, hotnewstalkradio.com. Keep it tuned to our Facebook page for live streams and more exclusive content from us here monitoring the local elections. What about the state election, right? What about state ballots? That matters, too. We're going to talk about that and quite a bit more on Facebook. Colin Cowherd is coming up next, one of the best sports shows in the history of radio, in the history of frequency modulation, here on Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240, hotnewstalkradio.com.